Lock in, everybody, I guess. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the EMT.FILMS podcast. Wow, that's been quite the thing to say because I have not done the podcast in like 6 years or so. I don't know. It's been a long time since I did the podcast with we're going to be watching today a movie with two new cast members who you've seen on the channel. I'm joined today with Andrew. I'm here with Andrew Schaefer, writer-director. You've seen some of his films on the channel, and I'm also joined with Jonathan Corden, one of the more famous actors known here in Northern Virginia. So, please, guys, introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Andrew. I like movies.
Cool.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Corden. I also like movies, and I've had the pleasure of working with this guy, Mr. Alex, aka Mr. EMT.FILMS himself, on numerous projects of his, and it's just a pleasure, man.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. It's not like I'm forcing you to be here, but I really do enjoy your company, and I'm glad we could watch this movie today. I don't know if I mentioned it already at the beginning, but we are watching the first Lord of the Rings film, the extended editions. Truly the
Fellowship of the Ring.
The only way to watch it, the Fellowship of the Ring, and all three, I guess, the original trilogy. We're not doing the original trilogy right now per se, but we will eventually get to it. But tonight we're watching the Fellowship of the Ring, and wish us luck. I don't think Andrew's seen it in a while. Jonathan's definitely hasn't seen it in a while.
I haven't seen it in a while.
I actually watched it last month. But.
So you'll get our take. So we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back after going through the process of finishing the film. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of it. I mean, it's been a while for you, Jonathan, so maybe we could start with you.
Yeah. I'm going to say, like, last time I saw this movie was, like, 10 years ago, and I was, like, during, like, a family trip during the holidays. I remember we watched all the movies, like, on the road, and just remembering just, like, how great it was watching all of them, and just like today, like just watching it back for the first time was like,
it took you back there.
It took me back there. It just kind of like brought me back to like the first time, like when I saw this 10 years ago, like just like the intro to like the characters, like the story arcs, the music and everything, just like everything about it was just like like you said, like really brought me back to like really how much of a masterpiece like this was.
Yeah. How old were you when you were watching those films? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was like 15 at the time.
It's a good solid age to watch those at.
Like,
I remember not having the exact same experience, but definitely this is like the movie that I would watch religiously as a kid, and even now in like my adult age. I can't get enough of it. It's like it's something that reminds me of when I was younger, and kind of like the whimsy you would get from like, or like the feeling that you would get more than whimsy when watching like a film for the very first time, because this is one of my first films that I remember watching as a really, really small child. I think I might have been like 12 or maybe like 10 or 9. These films definitely came out when I was young. It was like early 2000s. So that being said, like I remember going to the theater. I remember going to the Cineplex to watch this and just being just amazed. Like it was like watching, I don't know, the experience left me wanting more, and thankfully they came out with 2 more films afterwards, and then maybe 3 more films, regretfully, to the director's dismay of making the Hobbit films. That's neither here or there. It's a different topic for a different podcast. But I really enjoyed the films, and they're part of the stepping stones that brought me to wanting to be a filmmaker, you know. from everything from the practicality of what they did on those films to like the scenes and the emotional like drive that each actor brought to their characters. I know we like to joke on the lead character and the lead actor as much as we do, especially Andrew calling him Frody, which is a pretty good name, honestly, to give him. He coined that last night over the group chat. But yeah, I think Elijah Wood really knocked it out of the park as Frodo. I know some may disagree, but I did enjoy watching him as Frody growing up. So, what about you, Andrew?
Yeah, so growing up, I wasn't really quite as, I would say, acquainted with Lord of the Rings. I was definitely familiar with it. I definitely had heard of it and everything, but I had never read the books or anything. But I had seen all 3 of the movies when I was fairly young. I'd say probably like 10 or 9 years old. And so similarly to Jonathan and you, seeing Fellowship of the Ring very much reminds me of being that age and being like puts me back at that time and being a child. And watching it now, I'm really kind of amazed at how well paced the movie is, because we were watching the extended edition, which is I think 30 minutes longer than the theatrical cut, which the theatrical cut's still pretty long, but this was about 3 hours and 40 minutes. But when you're watching it, it never really feels like that. It just breezes by. And I think that is mainly due to how engaging many of the scenes are. Like none of the scenes in this movie ever feel like pointless. Everything has a reason for being there. And the movie's also edited extremely well, where everything nothing goes on for way too long. Everything is going at a very seamless pace.
Yeah, I know, and I agree with that because, well, to a certain degree, now I think every film has that one little mistake, especially when it comes to editing or pacing. I think The Lord of the Rings, especially with this first one, really knocked it out of the park. But they did have their occasional blunders here and there. I think there was that coffee cup that was in Moria. I don't know if you guys saw it in this one. I think they took it out in the extended edition.
Yeah, I think so.
But I remember it being there in the theatrical release when I was a kid, and I was like, "Is that a coffee cup? is that really there?" And I didn't know that. I guess the dwarves really had to get their kick in somehow, especially mining all the time. It's got to be an exhausting endeavor. But that being said, it also gives praise and testament to what the crew and the director himself endured for, I think, what was it, 14 months that it took for them to film not just this film, but all 3 films, which all 3 films are as long as they are and as masterful as well put together they are. That's insane. I don't think I could ever put a trilogy together in 14 months. It would probably take me a little longer.
And they were all released right after each other, and so it wasn't like the prequel trilogy, which came out kind of close to the same time, which is following the same story but over many years. This movie, I believe, came out in 2001. Two Towers came out in 2002, and Return of the King came out in 2003. But they're all filmed, like you said, over 14 months, kind of back to back to back to back. And so it gave it a much more seamless release, having these movies released so closely together.
Exactly. Yeah, and then it's also... Sorry, Jonathan. It's also a testament, if I could just end this off on the last thing, is I know New Line, I think you said New Line Cinemas isn't really a studio anymore, or a film production company, which is kind of sad to see it go. And it kind of leads into the topic of what we're experiencing today in the industry, which is, sell-offs, mergers, and all that other crazy junk that this Hollywood industry has brought upon itself and onto us as the audience and the general public. But they don't make them like how they used to anymore. When they try to,
Definitely
it's
not.
generally a bloated mess. But that's neither here or there. I think it's just a matter of who's in charge, and we'll get back there eventually. And I think I like to think that our generation is going to be the ones to do it. And
Hopefully.
it just takes a little time, and with this industry, that's a kind of like an element to everything, which is time. As much as we don't want that to be the case, you know, I think with time, someone's going to break the mold, and I think that's going to be one of us. Hopefully, you know, fingers crossed. But yeah, and it's, you know, rest in peace, New Line Cinema. But I think Peter Jackson is still out there somewhere, and if you can hear us, Peter Jackson, we appreciate the work you did. At least, you know, I enjoyed most of the films that you worked on. I haven't seen too many of your documentaries. Granted, I'm not a huge documentary guy, but you know, every now and then I do like indulge myself in one of those. But the opening lore, like, since we're talking about the Lord of the Rings, I think to go back on some of the masterful storytelling they had at the beginning is like a good representation of what like Tolkien wanted to tell in his stories. I know like the films aren't like a one-to-one match, especially with like the opening part. I think the lore is a very interesting part to start with, especially when explaining like what the One Ring is and who Sauron was, and like what what Middle Earth was and meant to a lot of the people who lived in it. I think it was a very great way of doing it. I think most people don't tend to see a narration as like something worth sitting through unless it's like something that needs a defining like characteristic, like a story like this.
As I was watching the opening, I was thinking like, I think this is probably, at least in my recollection anyway, the best opening to a movie, because it's probably the opening where it explains who Sauron is, and it essentially gives you the rundown for people that aren't familiar with the entire mythos of Lord of the Rings. Explains you in probably 5, maybe 6 minutes everything you need to know, and it never felt like bloated or kind of overwhelming with the amount of information, which is actually kind of insane, because with everything that they are giving you, it should feel that way. But because of how well the film is written, and because of how well the film is edited and everything, it feels so insanely seamless and engaging, and you don't even really realize, oh, this entire introduction scene is 5 minutes, because it just breezes by.
Exactly. And like I just broke my pen. Anyways, no, I do agree with how you perceived the film's opening introduction. I think that like it's the best way to go about introducing people into the world of the Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is quite the read, I will say. So having something as easily understood as like a 5-minute opener that kind of breaks it all down to you, names the characters, names the teams, who's on the side of good and evil, and really just presents it to you in like a very digestible way is the very best way of going about it. And it wasn't all just dialogue and like, you know, costumes and everything. There was action in it that brought people to be invested into like the world, and like why, you know, the One Ring was such a big threat, and who Sauron was, and why he meant, he was this world-ending catastrophe or calamity that they had to stop. That like gives the main characters later on in the story something to like actually, you know, be afraid of, and to work together towards eliminating, which is going to Mordor and throwing the One Ring in the fire of Mount Doom. But I want to talk about like some of the things that you may know, like in the back of your mind about like that scene. I have something that I remember seeing online. I think I was watching like a corridor video where they were talking about how the suit of armor the Sauron's wearing, maybe they heard it down the line from somebody in the industry, but that wasn't really there. It was supposed to be like a spirit, like it was Sauron himself, and then in like later in post-production they like recorded somebody else wearing a suit, and they superimposed it onto that like wispy character of an actor who's there. So I think it's very interesting that they did that. Like I like what they did with like how it ended up being in the final result.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have been interesting to see like the physical body of Sauron, because I had this experience when I was younger where I was confused. I was like, who's Sauron and who's the Witch King of Angmar, right? They show you the ring wraiths in this film, but they're never clearly like saying like, are these Sauron, like who they're servants of Sauron, but one of them could be Sauron, because there's like they show like a visual link to it, and it confused me. But like at the time I was like, maybe it's just like how they decided to visually interpret the wraiths and these characters as villains. And like, so Sauron's not that much of a force in this film. He's more of a force in the later films, like kind of a presence in the background. But in this film, he's like, same thing, a great presence, a great threat, but isn't the main thing that's like chasing the characters around in the movie. So, and I wanted to like ask you, Jonathan, to get your 2 cents on like what you thought about the opening part of the film, like how it impacted you as an actor. I know when it comes to storytelling, it's not just about like what you say, it's how you present it through, you know, your physical being. And like, I know the actors in the opening scene, especially the actress who's giving the narration, has a lot to go through. Especially with how dense the source material is, when it comes to like stuff like that. I want to get your like opinion. Like, what do you think of the Lady Galadriel played by and I blank on names when I'm on the spot like here, but Cate Blanchett. What did you think of her performance? Like, how do you think she did while going through that narration? Because I know sometimes it takes a lot to really just come up with like different ways of performing those lines.
Yeah, I was gonna say, cause like I like Cate Blanchett. It's like she's a very
Get closer to the mic.
Cate. I've been a fan of Cate Blanchett. Well, she's like one of the most like very like versatile like actors out there. That's why like I always like gain like an appreciation for like actors that like can like put themselves out there. Like, oh,
you dropped this phone.
I dropped my phone, guys. I'm professional. Like,
that's okay. You're doing fine.
And like, and not only from Cate Blanchett, but like other like actors out there that like that just are just able to just like get into the shoes of the characters so well. And like, I also like sort of like Andrew, going back to what Andrew said as far as like the amount of storytelling that's told like in this movie is like, he said like nothing felt like dragged out or anything. Like everything just had like the right, just perfect amount of storytelling. Like in this movie, it's like over 3 hours long. And well, this extended, it was like 4 hours, 3.5 hours, and just like and just like not much to say for that. Just everything was just like the right amount. And Cate Blanchett is just like really good at what she does.
Yeah. How did you feel about her performance? Like, was it something that you would rate like on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, how would you feel about receiving that performance from another actor? Like, you're on the opposite side and she's telling you the lore of Middle Earth. Like, would you be invested? As I think I would.
Oh yeah. Oh no, 100%. I was like,
yeah. Any notes? Like, any notes at all?
Any note?
Would you give Cate Blanchett any notes about like her delivery in that? Like what more could you want?
What more I want for it? More Cate Blanchett, honestly.
More Cate Blanchett.
Not enough Cate
Blanchett.
This
is true.
Give me.
Can never get enough of more.
Okay, gotta get more. Yeah.
So, what about you, Andrew? Do you think Cate Blanchett could have done differently in the delivery of the lore?
I mean, really nothing. Kind of echoing what Jonathan said. Yeah, I really loved her performance. I mean, there really wasn't anyone in the movie that I thought did a bad job. I think this movie kind of represents every department performing at its best. Like the cinematography, the lighting department, the costume department, the actors, obviously, every single department of the movie was performing at their very best. And kind of going back to what you were saying, Alex, about the narration at the very opening, I really liked how the narration was almost acting as almost as though it was reading from the book and bringing in the audience with her voiceover and with her very powerful voice, almost commanding the audience in a way. And so I thought the way that she performed it worked really, really well.
Nice. Yeah, no, and I do agree that her performance is very strong. I could not ask for more, but if I had to, I wouldn't change much really. It would be small things like maybe because it's told very straight to you, like as she's reading it, because it's lore. But like we've all been in. I take it like some of us have played D&D, right? Have you guys played D&D? Mm-hmm. Like D&D is kind of like based off of like the Lord of the Rings. Like when they made D&D, they're like, oh yeah, Tolkien books. Let's kind of go with that and like make a game out of it. And so like I think like any lore master, like any GM, I think those are always the fun parts about playing those games, because you get to give a little more. Mm-hmm. And I think with giving a little more to Cate Blanchett, there's so much more that she gave in this film. Like she gave a lot, but I think I could have asked for like something a little more dramatic, just to like give that visual interpretation of the events between the armies of Middle Earth versus Sauron, a little more of a bombastic feel. I don't know if that would have extended the runtime from that 5 minutes that we agreed upon was like rather the best way of going about it. Mm-hmm. But I think it could have added a little more to it, because I think it was such a defining moment in their time in the lore, that like maybe a little more character rather than reading it straight in her voice would have helped to boost the severity of the situation that the characters found them in.
That's interesting.
And especially with like Isildur and like his temptation after the defeat of Sauron with the One Ring. The One Ring is a very interesting interpretation of power. At least that's how I've always saw it. Or a representation and an interpretation of power and how it corrupts. So there could have been like from on my side, if I was Peter Jackson and when I would have given notes, that's what it would have been. It's just like, give me a little more fear in the sense of like, this was it. This was the battle to end the battles, right? This was the moment where we needed to defeat Sauron. And so like lead into, because she didn't have that much narration. She just said, this is the battle that happened. This is what's going on, right? But I would have liked to have heard a little more fear, or like at least more of like a heightened sense of like tone, to really sell that point home. Because when I saw that part, I was like, oh, this is the battle. The visual matches everything, but the narration needs to give me more, That's about it. Other than that, she did amazing, and I don't have any other notes.
So to sort of give more of an impression that the battle has more of a personal impact on her rather than being a more detached perspective of just reading it.
Yeah, because like Galadriel's a detached character. Like she was involved in the lore a little bit. If you want to go into the Silmarillion and all the other books of Tolkien that he wrote regarding around Sauron and like all that other stuff, but I think she just felt a little too detached, like as if she was just reading a book to like somebody. And I think it would have been better, because I'm sure she was alive then and she just wasn't participating in the battle. But it was quite the effort, because it involved the elves, the dwarves, and men to like unify to fight against Sauron. And so you think that would have a little more of an emotional impact on somebody who's reliving a story that they probably lived through.
Yeah, or something that has probably affected their way of living.
Exactly.
Because we also see Hugo Weaving in that scene, and he later interacts with her. And so, yeah, that definitely makes sense to me that it would have some sort of personal impact on her.
And maybe it's like a leadership quality. Maybe it's like being stoic in the face of like a problem, like Sauron, a big threat, that she decided not to do that, because seeing as Hugo Weaving's character, Lord Elrond, he's the lore master in the stories, not her. But I mean, she does have an impact in like telling what the story is about, and like how the characters navigate that world. But I think it affected him more than it did her. And I got that extra sense of urgency from Hugo Weaving's performance of like, this is the big problem, right? We have to do this, right? There's a little humility in that too, and especially with his delivery. But I would have liked to also seen it from her. But I guess that also takes away a little bit of like her character and how she was interpreted, because she was kind of like this ethereal creature, this being that like was unaffected by the problems of the world, but had a big stake in seeing the good rise above evil, but just didn't show it. Because like if she showed it, then like I guess that would have freaked everybody else out, and everybody else would be like, we have no chance, we have no shot at beating Sauron. So yeah, which I guess that goes in part in like, I think that's why these films are so masterful, is because they kind of knew where they wanted to go, and like they didn't add so much to make it like feel a little more bloated, as you say. Like
like other trilogies.
But even then, I think like there's that silly element to Tolkien, and how things aren't as serious as they seem to be, even though they are. Because Tolkien was kind of a funny guy. Like a lot of his stories incorporated a lot of religion aspects, and like the innocent nature of man and humans and the hobbits to a lesser extent, that they were just people, you know, with flaws and everything. And you know, these people weren't perfect. That's why I think that the story works so well, because it was like a telling of like average people, like unsuspecting people, could rise up to be greater and do great things, like taking down the evils of the world.
Well, because no one would suspect you know, Hobbit like Frodo to be the one to throw the ring into Mount Doom, because in that one scene they're thinking, oh, it's going to be the Ranger, it's going to be Legolas, it's going to be this person, it's going to be that person, and they never suspect that it would be a Hobbit, because to them that's kind of like the bottom of the totem pole, sort of, because they just see the Hobbit as just like, okay, that guy's just sort of like a very meager, average kind of person. Like there's no way that he can be heroic. And Frodo very much goes on his arc definitely isn't complete yet, but even in this one film he very much goes through a transformation of, at the beginning, seeming like he just wants to be in one spot, but then eventually he desires more beyond his home. And it's obviously very, very different, but Frodo's character very much reminds me of Luke in Star Wars, where Luke wanted more beyond where he was, and so he ventured out beyond Tatooine, and then eventually became a much more mature character. Frodo wanted more beyond where he lived, and then ventured out beyond, and then his journey ended up maturing him. And so there's some similarity there. Obviously, they're very, very different stories in a lot of different ways, but that's just kind of one small similarity. I wanted to touch on something that neither of you have really addressed, which is Gollum in this movie, which is, I thought it was really interesting how they address Gollum a little, but they don't pull all attention to him, and they don't address him that much. They show him a few times here and there, mainly in silhouette, and mainly from far away. And I felt that kind of instilled more interest in me for the character and wanted to see more of him. Because if you just see him like all the time, then there's not really any desire to be like, oh, I wonder what's the deal with this character. That going forward is for the next movie is like, oh, I want to see more of like what's going on with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, like, I agree with the aspect of like not seeing him so much in this film. Just because that gave a little more of a mystique to his character. He was mainly just talked about in passing. I mean, you did see him a little bit. You see like silhouettes, you see like close-ups or like distance. There's like a wide shot at the beginning of him like sitting on the rock from a scene from The Hobbit.
Yeah.
But I think the way they handled having him be almost like a similar to Sauron in a way, as a presence, overbearing and overlooking the main characters on their journey, to set up how much of an impact they'll have in the future. Because I don't want to go too far into the second and third film, but he does have like a much greater impact. He's more of like a he's more of the exposition to like what the ring did to him and like how Frodo relates to him in those films, and like how they're one and the same as to like how the ring is affecting them. Like Smeagol has been corrupted by the ring. He's been around for like a little more than 500 years from what I remember the film saying. And so I think it works better that he's more of a presence in the other films than he is in this one. Granted, I would have liked to have seen more, because just Andy Serkis is a talented actor, and like seeing it would have been interesting to see what his character would have had to say to the other characters in this film. But I don't think it was all that necessary, and I think the way they approached it was best, honestly.
I think what worked was the lack of Gollum, I should say, in this film. I think helped to position the audience in the perspective of the characters, namely Frodo and Sam, because when you see this character kind of crawling around, you're kind of thinking the same as Frodo, like what is that? Like if you're a first time viewer and you've never seen anything Lord of the Rings and you're not really familiar with it, you're having the exact same reaction, which is, who is that? And then Gandalf telling him he used to be a hobbit, that instilled a lot more interest into the viewer, and you think, well, I want to see more of this character, but it's also not the main driving thing. It's supporting it. It's not the main driving factor of the narrative.
Yeah, and it's like it's a good lead into who the character becomes later on in the films. I like the aspect of like how I like the interpretation of humanizing Gollum in a way throughout the films, but in this one specifically, it does the setup for his character. There was a scene in Moria where Frodo kind of like wants Gollum dead. He's like disgusted by the idea of a creature existing like that, and like Gandalf says to him, like, are you so easily able to dish out judgment on somebody, you know, lesser than you? And he kind of like makes Frodo think like, yeah, like does Gollum have as much of a right to die as like someone like Sauron? Because like Gollum's not a villain per se, he's a victim of the ring and its corruption, and so it gives that extra level of humanity to Gollum. And you kind of feel for him more later on in the books, and you kind of see also where like Frodo's coming from. Mr. You Old Frody later on in the movies decides that like, you know, I'm gonna trust this guy more than my best friend. So, but that's because like, you know, he's starting to see like, this is my future, this is who I'll become if we don't get rid of this ring. And so like that's why I think Gollum was such a key element to get right in this film, by not showing him at all, by only showing like snippets of him. And it's so good that we got to hear his voice too, because then we get to like really expect what a tortured person like Gollum would sound like after that many years with the One Ring. What do you think, Jonathan?
I mean, yeah, like you said, we guys, yeah, pretty much covered it. Like, I like how like they like showed like not it's like not too much of Gollum, but like a good amount of Gollum
Mm-hmm.
for like the upcoming other trilogies to this franchise. And the other, I mean, not really not much add to it. I feel like guys like pretty much covered it.
Sure. How did you feel for his character? Like when you first saw Gollum as a kid, did he freak you out? Did he like give you the willies and like, or were you like Frodo, where you didn't care too much about his character and you thought like maybe that character should die, we should kill him, or maybe Bilbo should have killed him? Because like Gollum is like in a sense a Hobbit character that like transitions over to the Lord of the Rings. So like any newcomer to the films watching the first one for the first time like wouldn't really know who Gollum is unless they're a fan of Tolkien. So how did you feel like when you were a kid, or even now, like watching Gollum? How did you feel for that character? Did you feel his impact and his like his struggle?
Yeah. No, saying like the way you said that, like saying that from an actor's perspective, I always like look for like the empathy like in people, as far as like I look and see like I would try to see like what's like this story, what's like their backstory behind to like why they are like the way he is like today. Cause like especially like in a world that's so like corrupt, like criminals, like bad people out there. I'm just like we don't start as like bad people. It's just like where we come from that makes us into who we are today. So like when I saw that, I was just like I felt bad for that guy. And it's just, but like, yeah,
it's a tragic thing.
It is, yeah.
It really is. I wouldn't know how to feel if I like. I mean, when I was a kid, when I first saw it, I was like, "That's creepy," and I don't really like that thing. But like, I never wanted it to die, because I always had like this idea of like, it's kind of like a person who's a drug addict, right? They can't like. They can't break away from something they've been with for so long. And that's how I kind of perceived Gollum as a kid. He was just a crazy crackhead.
Yeah. Gollum definitely seems to be like an allegory for addiction. You don't see much of that present here. That's more so in Two Towers and Return of the King, where you see how much his obsession with the ring has definitely destroyed his life. In this film, the way that he is perceived is more so as a villain rather than a victim. And I would personally say that he's not fully characterized yet, where he's more so just seen as just kind of as a villain, as a thing to avoid rather than a fully realized person. And with the coming films that happened, where you got to see his tragic backstory.
Yeah,
I mean, they really did implant like a little seed of empathy for that character through Gandalf and through how Bilbo historically dealt with him. And so I always say, like, for Gollum to be perceived in that way, I never thought he was like a bad character or like a villain. He was more of just like a bystander that fell to the wayside and just never got back up. You know, he is in that sense like an allegory for addiction and like how it affects you, how it affects most people who are addicted to drugs, money, alcohol, power, or whatever. But I think it's like it's an interesting thing to like have addiction to something be the emphasis of a character. I guess you could say that's his emphasis. Someone who can't break away from something that calls to him, like the One Ring does to Gollum. But you know, it's that empathy that like really makes you feel for that character. You know, I never would wish that upon anyone. That's a really dark place to go. But I think in this first film, they really set up the empathy element of it. Because the later films, like you said, it's like more of like a villain. He's an antagonist to Sam and Frodo on their journey. But I think in this film, they're like setting up the tragedy of Gollum's life and the empathy that we should feel for him, not as like a villain or like a victim of the One Ring, but more as a victim to himself, really. Because like it's been shown that hobbits have the ability to resist the One Ring, and so Gollum is like the only exception apparently, aside from Frodo. But like, you know, Gollum didn't have a Samwise Gamgee to help him through the struggles of dealing with the One Ring.
And I think the way that Gollum is also presented in this film gives a reason for Frodo to want to trust him in the next film, seeing, well, not to get ahead, but how in this film he seems so kind of like there's no way that he can ever be dangerous. There's no way that he can be a threat. And so I think that would give reason to Frodo to think, well, there's no reason that we shouldn't trust him. I mean, look at him. There's no way that he can hurt us. There's no way that he can do anything. So I think the way that Gollum is depicted here definitely gives a reason for Frodo to think that there's a reason that he can trust Gollum. I wanted to talk a little about Bilbo, because if there is a slight flaw with this film, the one thing I would have liked to see more of is Bilbo, because something I really liked about it is the dynamic between Bilbo and Gandalf, and you get the impression that they are two friends that have a very long storied history between the two of them. I think of that scene where they're both smoking some, like, it had a specific name.
Oh yeah, Old Toby.
When they're smoking Old Toby.
They're tobacco of the world.
When they're smoking Old Toby in the film, and they're telling these stories together. I wanted more of Bilbo, because I think that he's a very vital part of Frodo's story, because I think Frodo is a very big component of the Hobbit perspective, but I think it's kind of incomplete without Frodo and Bilbo, because I think Bilbo, well, for one thing, Bilbo was the originator of it. He's the reason that we even have the ring in the first place. And so I think him kind of exiting the narrative, I'm not saying that that's necessarily a flaw. I just personally would have liked to see more of him in the film. I would have liked it if he was a larger part of it for the remainder of it, and that he and Frodo shared a bit more scenes together, because just kind of going off memory, I can't really think of any scenes in the film other than in Rivendell, and then there's like I think one scene that they had back at their home, but other than that they don't really have many scenes. So I felt like that was a kind of a missed opportunity.
That's fair. I mean, I think that's I That's definitely more of like a criticism that falls in line with like I guess Tolkien's writing, because he didn't really keep him around too much. But I do agree with you that like it could have served the story, or at least Bilbo, or at least not Bilbo, Frodo in a way that would have accelerated his growth as a character, because like this is Frodo's first time going on a journey. It would have helped to have a mentor or somebody like Bilbo around to show him the ropes, to like really like calm him down. But because then that would have also like given, like you said, credence to the elements of like what a hobbit is. And I think like you said, Frodo being more of a representation of like the traditional hobbit who isn't really all that interested in going out on adventures like Bilbo was. Bilbo was the exception. He had this relationship prior with Gandalf through the Hobbit books and films. You know, as much as people like to clown on the films, I think the films did at least give a nice structure to who Bilbo would eventually become, and to give like that character of a wise explorer, a real adventurer, to his character later on in the movies of the Lord of the Rings as an older person. But I guess that could have hindered. That also is a hindrance too, just because it's like the old saying, your parents aren't always going to be there. I know Bilbo's not really Frodo's parents, but like he took Frodo in when he lost or had some kind of a tragedy happen with his parents. It's never made super clear, at least in the movies. But it's one of the things where you can't always have your parents around. You gotta have to head out into the world on your own to like make your mistakes, fall on the ground, and pick yourself back up. And it could have hindered Frodo at the beginning if he had Bilbo join him on the journey, because then Bilbo would have picked them up. Also, we also have to remember that like Bilbo's like Gollum, a victim of the One Ring. He also has an addiction to it, so having him around could also have been a liability. It could have been an issue where Bilbo would have seen the One Ring hanging on Frodo's neck and just taken it for himself and disappeared into the night, and then people would have been like, oh shit, where did the One Ring go? Oh crap. And so like Bilbo could have easily been a liability, and I'm glad that they kept him out of that part of the story, but I'm pretty sure there would have been some interesting aspects of the nature of what a hobbit is and like what a hobbit can be. Because I think the exceptional aspect to Bilbo is that he is unlike other hobbits. He decides to, for himself, go out and do the things that he wants to do, like go out on adventures, and not be like such a homebody, which I think was why a lot of people can relate to the hobbits. Is a lot of them are homebodies. A lot of them are just like very they're not much for exploring. You know, they really like the comfort of their home and like the tranquility of like a peaceful life. And like in real life, there's the exceptions to that rule, which are people who go out and start businesses, explore, leave their hometowns, leave the comfort of their parents' house to go kind of live a hard life. But I think keeping Bilbo away from Frodo at the start of his journey and throughout the rest of his journey was a smart move on Tolkien's part. And I think I don't think I personally wouldn't have changed it, but I do see where you're coming from.
And like you said, man, like in one of the scenes where Frodo and Bilbo like their last scene where Bilbo asks Frodo to like touch the ring for the last time, and Frodo just kept it back from him, and then Bilbo just like absolutely just like lost it toward him, and like you said, like that would have affected like their journey, like with them, like if Bilbo had tagged along, and like you said, like the hobbits there are homebodies, and else in the scene where Sam said like this is like the farthest like they've they've ever like been away like from their hometown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's really
they never leave that area because it's like safety, it's comfort.
Exactly.
Conformity is what I was trying to find the words to. So,
and then kind of touching on the scenes with Bilbo and Gandalf, something that I really liked was that they never used any kind of flashbacks for those scenes where they're talking about their history together. We're only getting the experiences purely through their dialogue and the way they're interacting with each other. Because I feel that if they were to just use flashbacks, that would have been completely unnecessary. Because we are able to understand that these characters are close, and we are able to understand that these characters have a very long history just by the way that they're interacting with each other. Mm-hmm. And the only kind of flashback that we have is the scene where Bilbo finds the ring, and that's really it. Everything else is just we're told of, and then that in my opinion that's better, because then that kind of fills your imagination with these images, and then that's better than just seeing it, because then you're able to visualize what that would have been like.
Exactly. I think having those interactions between the characters and like how they state their history with one another allows people to like really exercise their brain muscles and their imagination muscles to really build that image, aside from the movie just showing you the imagery of what those could have looked like, because we got the whole Hobbit films out of some of those interactions. And going back to watch like the first film and the second and third film of The Lord of the Rings, and having like characters like Gandalf refer to characters from The Hobbit, really like puts that gives you that perspective, like, oh yeah, that's right, he was talking about these characters, because now you know them through the Hobbit films. But if you read the book, you know, it kind of like led into your own interpretation, your own imagination, how you saw those characters, mm-hmm. and how they could have been, how honestly they probably should have been. Mm-hmm. But you know, I think that's the way to do it, honestly, because it's like, it's more than just visually showing, it's also visually telling, but masterfully like allowing the audience to imagine like what those scenarios could have looked like in their minds, and would have, I guess, drawn them in more into the world, into the story, and like pushed them to finding the books and reading the books and getting to know the source material on a personal basis. Mm-hmm. And I know we're talking about Bilbo and Gandalf here, but I think it's really funny to also bring up their relationship and their dynamic as these two characters that are basically friends, right? And as like any friends, any relationship you're in, you know, as amicable as it could be, sometimes we get into spats with one another. And I know that one of the scenes I really enjoyed that had Gandalf and Bilbo in funny interactions, or the scene where like Bilbo is getting ready to leave. He just like kind of snuck away from his birthday party, and he's like getting ready to like pack up all his stuff. He puts the ring in his coat pocket, and Gandalf finds him in his house, and he's like, you probably think you were funny, guy, huh? Getting away like that, but you shouldn't be using magical rings like that, because at the time Gandalf didn't know it's the One Ring. And so, you know, Bilbo being Bilbo is like already affected by the ring, doesn't want to give it up, tells Gandalf, hey, it's on the fireplace mantle, it's in a letter, I'm leaving it to Frodo, can you look after him, right? Gandalf goes to look for it, doesn't find it, and then Bilbo starts to, like Gollum, become more and more protective of the One Ring, because it's his property, essentially, is how he sees it. And that's where you like the element of addiction, like the element of like how an interaction with a friend who's trying to help another friend comes into play. It's a little funny too, because like you can imagine like a 3-foot character next to like an adult human male, just like the way they're interacting is it's really funny to me, because like Bilbo in the story is 111 years old. Gandalf is like 1,000,000 years old, because he's like an angel, an undying angel that is in an old man's body or whatever. But like, you know, he yells at him. He says like, dude, you're hiding the One Ring from me. He's like, why should I give it up? Why should I give it to you? and like Bilbo puts his fists up and he's like ready to duke it out with Gandalf, and I thought that was really fucking funny. Could you imagine? He's like, "You're gonna take the ring from me, but take it from my cold dead hands." And then Gandalf puts in like the serious voice. He's like, "Bilbo Baggins, I am not some cheap conjurer of tricks."
Well, I think that scene highlighted a key aspect of their relationship, which is they're very good friends, but they don't have to walk on eggshells with each other, where certain things aren't off limits. They're able to talk about very sensitive things with each other. They're able to get very viscerally mad, not in a way to push the other person away, but as a like, I love this person a lot and I don't want them to fall to this addiction sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's a sign of it's an element and a sign of trust between the two characters, because even after like Gandalf kind of yells at Bilbo for trying to fight him for the One Ring, they immediately go in for a hug, because like it's a sign that Bilbo like trusts Gandalf, knows that like he's only just trying to protect his friend, right? And like Bilbo also knows like there's something wrong with this thing, and I have to let it go. And up till the very end of that scene where he like drops the ring on the floor and gives it up, do we really understand like the full scope of their relationship and how they've come to trust each other, especially since now Bilbo's leaving the One Ring with Gandalf to give to Frodo. It's that emotional resonance that hits home with me personally, because it's like family. Gandalf's like family to Frodo. I mean, to Bilbo and Frodo to an extent, you know, and the hobbits, because he's kind of taken up residence in the Shire. People know him, people love him, people like to see his fireworks, and he's an overall and pretty cool guy, I think. I wouldn't say living with a wizard is all fun and games, because there's probably a lot of mischief that happens around the Shire. But I think that like those relationships are the best ones to interpret in film, going back to Bilbo and Gandalf, and it's just so good to see something like that, you know. I can't give enough praise to Tolkien and the writers of the Lord of the Rings films for having the creative foresight to interpret those scenes in that element, because it could have been done in so many different ways. Like we could have seen it play out as a really, really, really funny comedy that would have ruined the emotional stake and the severity of the situation between Bilbo and the Ring, and how he interacts with his friends and how it affects him. It could have been a very serious scene where like it plays up that addiction a lot, to the point where it's like, okay, we get it kind of thing. But no, I think it's a good balance. I wouldn't change it for anything, honestly.
No, I agree. I agree with you.
Cool.
Like you said, like they're like Gandalf and Bilbo, like they're like the like unique like dynamic duo that they have. Like the way like Gandalf is like trying to help Bilbo, like that's a definition of like just like a real friend right there. That like yeah, they're like good friends, they laugh with each other, but like also not afraid, like you said, to like to be vulnerable and talk about these like talk about like real stuff. And
exactly. And they're not really like pouring their heart and souls out to each other, because they kind of know on an instinctual level, when you're friends with somebody for such a long time, you kind of pick up on like subtle cues, or that whether it's like tone shifts or the way like someone interacts with you, like when someone doesn't look you directly in the eyes, or they're kind of like avoiding you, or even when they don't say anything. Like I think Bilbo goes quiet for a scene where he doesn't respond directly to Gandalf, but Gandalf kind of knows what's up, because he's like, oh yeah, this is my boy. He doesn't really act like this all the time, from when I knew him and when I still know him, because I come by every now and It just shows like that the world is a living, breathing thing, and that the people that exist in that world are real people. Even if they're fictional, they're still real people played by very, very, very talented actors. Yeah. So I wouldn't. I don't know if I want to conclude this, but like, the music. The music is a huge element to this film. I think you bring it up as more of like its own beast to the thing, right? Because like I can't imagine the Lord of the Rings.
I can't really imagine it without the music. Like kind of comparing it to Star Wars again. I can't really think of a movie that has a more, at least to me anyway, more iconic theme and score, where if you were to remove the score from this film, I don't think it would have the same emotional resonance, really. I don't think it would have the same impact necessarily, because I think that the score in this film definitely enhances, well, obviously it's mainly the script and the way the characters interact with each other, but I think a very big component of it is the music and how it very much carries the action of the film throughout.
Yeah, no, and I agree, because you can't really change or swap out the music for The Lord of the Rings. For a film that's categorized as a fantasy medieval epic, there are like few films that do a very similar thing to what The Lord of the Rings does with their music. But I think an orchestral soundtrack, is how it like reaches a person on a more monkey brain level. Like it's more of a reflex than anything, where it's like as soon as you hear this music, it elicits an emotional response to the scene that it applies to. Especially with how bombastic the music is, I'm not 100 on like who the composer for the music was.
Howard Shore.
Yeah, because like when you brought it up with Star Wars, right? It's John Williams. John Williams has like a very distinct orchestral music where like he has one or two specific instruments that have like more of the driving factor for the story. I think for the Star Wars, it's like the trumpet. And then like the rest of it's like violins comes in. For the Lord of the Rings, it's like everything all at once, because it's such an epic story to tell, but it also has those moments where it comes down and it's like the violin. But if I had to pick an instrument for this film, like how John Williams chose the trumpet, I think the violin really, really brings home the elements of the Lord of the Rings in its quiet moments and in its loudest moments.
I think the violin in this film, when I think of it, I very much think of the scenes at the Shire with the hobbits living very carefree, and it, to me, elicits a feeling of nostalgia when you're listening to it. And I noticed that, and this might just be me, but the theme when you're seeing the hobbits go about their life, and the theme when you're seeing Frodo and the Fellowship of the Ring go on their voyage, it sounded like it was the same song but just at a different key, where when it was at the Shire it was it was lower and more whimsical, but then when it was with the Fellowship of the Ring, it was more bombastic and with more instrumentals. I might be wrong about that, but that's just how I interpreted that.
I do agree that there's some things about the soundtrack that have like a reoccurring element to them, and the reason why I chose the violin, I think, not only does it play the theme of nostalgia in its recordings for the Shire, and how it's used in those scenes. But I think it adds to like a level of suspense. For me, I always enjoy violins, or hearing the sound of violins, or like a string quartet in very intense scenes, and like very high energy, high action type scenes. And you get that in the scenes for the Fellowship, where the ring wraiths are chasing around the four hobbits plus Aragorn around the woods, and up to the culmination to where Frodo gets stabbed. It's like a nice like dun 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 dun, and you can hear like the violins kind of fiddling in the background, but it's like a heavier fiddle. It's like it's so cool. It adds to it's very rock and roll. And a lot of people say like orchestras aren't that rock and roll, but like that's where the rock and roll genre kind of comes from, and really like evolved from. It's like classical music. Classical music has like this raw emotional intensity that can be very exciting, very thrilling, very like in your face, but it can also be very like emotionally soothing, because it elicits a variety of emotions through a variety of spectrums. It's just the tempo at which it's played. So like higher tempos make for great action-packed energy scenes that have like a lot of emotional depth and intensity to them. But when they're slower, when they're a little more paced to like a much calmer beat and tempo, that's when you get like the more nostalgic elements to it. And I think this film had a great composer make the best thing that he could for this thing, and I think it carries on in the other films. And I mean honestly, no notes. I can't really give it too many notes, but if I had to, I would say that like I wanted specific themes for characters. I would say that's it. Like I would want a Frodo theme, I would want a Gandalf theme, I want an Aragorn theme, and we do get those later on, but they're like you said, just like maybe the same song, the main same thing, key. But yeah, in a different key, or like with a few instruments removed, and it's more like subtle
to give it more of an impact.
Exactly.
And kind of relating to the idea of no notes really. The special effects in this film, I think, even today watching it in 2025, this film came out in 2001, it still looks really, really great, particularly with the miniatures. And what this film I think does best is the blending of CG and practical effects, and it also has really great makeup and creature effects, particularly with the orcs. And there is a lot of, some of the CG looked a little bit dated, but very, very infrequently. I would say the highlight in terms of the effects, in my opinion, was definitely the Force perspective, with characters like Frodo, where you'd have a character like Gandalf that was standing at a normal height, and then Frodo, who Elijah Wood isn't actually 3 feet tall, obviously, but the way that they would film it...
What? No, bro's tiny. I don't know if you guys have seen. I think he's like 5 foot.
But they would film it in a certain way to make it look like he was actually 3 foot.
Yeah, they use a lot of like old school film techniques, and they like revolutionized it to be a little more modern back in the day. There was a recent Corridor Digital video that talked about how they achieved it and how they were able to replicate the achievements that Peter Jackson and his team were able to do for The Hobbit and for The Lord of the Rings. So I would say like as far as like VFX go, or special effects and VFX, they really did revolutionize matte painting and kind of like paved the way for what people would end up doing digitally more than physically, because they did everything physically. Like they built sets, they built matte paintings, they built things to incorporate into machines, and how they were at the time becoming more and more of like a widely used tool for the filmmaking process. And so I think it would be interesting to revisit the Lord of the Rings with the technology we have today. Obviously don't fuck it up, but I don't know, like it could be a cool thing to see kind of redone in a way. But I personally wouldn't want it redone. Like as a fan of the franchise and the series and the books and the movies, I'm not a huge fan of Rings of Power, but I think like what it did for the story or for the visual effects in the modern day was good, but it could have been better, because it does not hold the candle to what the visual effects in the older films did, because even though they were a little rough around the edges, sometimes I think this film competes today with like all the high budget films, the overly inflated high budget films that come out today. I think it competes. Like, I don't know, it's just, there's a different feel to when it's like handcrafted and handmade, which this film was definitely handcrafted and handmade.
I think it would be interesting. Obviously, I would prefer if this film keeps, the same effects. But I think if they were to, approach making this film in this age, it would be interesting to see it done with the technology that they made The Mandalorian with, the volume, which is essentially that you have this screen behind you and you can project images behind you, so it's operating similarly to a green screen, but you have the image already behind you. It would be somewhat interesting, but kind of echoing what you said, I don't think that they should even touch it, because it's kind of the old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and I'm even though that's the mentality that I like to keep around. It's probably going to be done eventually in the future. Like someone's going to do it. But if they had to do it, I really wish they won't do what they did for the Rings of Power. Like, if anything, and I know the Tolkien estate is a really hard estate to work with to get the rights for. But it would have been cool for them to do the Silmarillion, because like it would have been cool to see, Morgoth and all those other elements before Sauron. Sauron's in those books, he's just like barely in it, but like those are things that they could explore and like kind of like build upon. Although those books are really tough to adapt, I think future down the line, it's going to be interesting to see how the visual effects hold up for something like that, especially if you want to be respectful to the lineage and the overall brand that like the Lord of the Rings built for itself through the films and the books, just because of how high of an achievement they achieved. You can't, the bar's been set so high, you can't like not set the bar higher with these kind of films and those kinds of stories. You kind of one up yourself, but like, to a respectful degree. I don't think changing the story is a good idea, but definitely like improving on the visual effects would be.
Just if they do that, Peter Jackson, if you're listening, do not do what George Lucas did, where you pretend as though the original cut of your movie does not exist and you just added special effects in like 1997 and then pretend that that's the new cut. Always make the original cut of the movie accessible and never bury the theatrical cut.
That would be really funny. I think Peter Jackson might have a little more integrity, but it's okay.
You think?
I hope so. You never know, especially when money is involved. So sometimes people throw away their integrity for
if they make more Lord of the Rings, which, not that I don't.
Well, they are, aren't they? They're making The Hunt for Gollum.
Well,
which is an interesting thing to do, because like I never really thought about it like that we needed a film like that. But sure, if Ian McKellen's like willing to come back and he thinks the script is good enough, I'll trust it.
Personally, I'm of the opinion that I don't think we really need more, because I think these 3 films are pretty close to perfect. And not to get ahead, we've kind of dropped a few references here and there to the Hobbit trilogy, but to me, those films were mostly misfires and kind of overindulgence on Peter Jackson's part, where these three films I felt were the perfect blend of practical and CG effects, where I think he kind of went completely overboard with the effects, completely making most of them CG in The Hobbit, and I equate a lot to the prequel trilogy. Desolation Smog was okay, but the rest of them I could do about. So if they were to do something Lord of the Rings related going forward, ideally I would like it to be Peter Jackson, but also I don't really need anything else Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean, like, Peter Jackson would be a cool pick. I think he's done. I think he's tired. I don't know if he's coming back to do The Hunt for Gollum, but I personally think he just doesn't want to, like, go back. If he ever does go back, I think the franchise is in reasonably good hands. I think I wouldn't pick anyone else to do it. I know they thought about using Guillermo del Toro. I think the man's got other priorities, Guillermo del Toro. So, like,
doing Phantom of the Opera.
I'm not really gonna count on him to come back or at least to try to come back, because I feel like that bridge is kind of burned. But hell, I'll throw my head in there. I want to do it. I want to make something cool like that. So, hey, if you're interested,
if anyone's listening, I'd love to do a Star Wars movie. So,
get this guy.
Get this guy. I wanted to do the Elden Ring movie, but, like, bro, they beat me to it. Fucking Alex Garland. Speaking of, like, studios and stuff, like WB, goddamn. Oh man. Well, aside from the Lord of the Rings, on that note, I think it's a good time to end the podcast. I think it's a good cutoff around this time. So thank you guys for joining me here on the couch while we watched the film. We didn't really watch it together, but definitely gave our feedback and our notes on what we thought, especially after a long time. Jonathan, do you have anything to say or close out that you would like to, let the audience know?
I did have a question, like, for you guys.
Yes, sir. Shoot.
So do you think if this franchise was made into more modern time, but Peter Jackson, like, directed it, do you think it would have more of an impact today or less? What do you guys think?
So I think that if this franchise was made today, that I don't think it would have the same impact. I think it would have, if I'm being honest, I think it would have slightly less of an impact, pop culturally speaking, because I think these films came out at the right time, at a very special time in terms of pop culture. The internet wasn't really a thing at that point. There wasn't as many. I mean, there weren't as many large-scale fantasy movies like this at the time, and so if this film were to come out, if these films were to come out today, I think that they would be very impressive, obviously, but I don't think that people would be, as impressed today, because of, at this stage, there's a lot more out there now. So I think if these films were to come out today, it'd be kind of like, okay, this is cool, but it's a bit late. I think that these films, because they came out in 2001, 2002, 2003, I think because they came out then, they very much started a trend and influenced the movies that are out today, the fantasy world, the fantasy worlds in film that are existing today. So if these films came out today, I don't think they would have really the same impact.
Yeah, I'm of the same belief. I think I don't know if it's about, like, the visual effects at all, or, like, the storytelling aspect of being kind of too late. I think it's more of an audience retention kind of thing. I don't really think that people would be clamoring to see the Lord of the Rings, like how they would have been, like how they did in the early 2000s. Just because, one, I think, like, those actors, they definitely would be old, so we'd have a new cast, and they wouldn't have the same star power. I think I don't think they would have had like the same presence to, like we lost we lost it.
Lee.
We lost Christopher Lee. So like there's no Saruman. Ian McKellen is Sir Ian McKellen. Sorry. With respect, I think he would be a little too tired and a little too jaded from everything else. I mean, he'd be interested for sure, but like I don't think on like a performance level that much would change. I think it's more about like the the state of the industry, really.
I think it's also that when these films came out in the early 2000s, there wasn't as much interest with Lord of the Rings, where if you were back when these films came out, if you were into Lord of the Rings, it wasn't really cool to be into them, where it was kind of niche, where the only Lord of the Rings movie that existed at the time was the Rankin Bass Hobbit film, which is from the 70s.
I mean, they had Lord of the Rings animations as well, but they weren't as good, and they were kind of silly. It was like a silly thing. It was part of a hobbyist kind of like culture,
right? And it wasn't mainstream in the same level, and there wasn't as much attention to Lord of the Rings. So I think having those films come out in that time definitely hit the right stride.
Yeah, and especially with now, like as I was saying earlier before we went into that, was the money that is used to make films like The Lord of the Rings, it's not being appropriately allocated today as it was back then. Studios are less inclined to gamble on like something like The Lord of the Rings today than they were back then. Back then they were more ready to take on that challenge, give that no-name director a shot at making something greater than he's ever made before in his life, probably. And like they don't do that now. It's not like something that interests studios.
Yeah.
It costs money, because
and it's also niche. It's like, oh, we're not going to adapt these three movies these three books that only people that are super obsessed with this world have heard of, because we care about money. We don't want to fund a $300 million, or this movie I think costs more than that, $400 million movie, if we don't think we're going to make our money back.
Yeah, and it's like the proof of concept too. Like there's no proof of concept that something like this would even work. It's that gamble again, like I said.
Well, because when this film came out, was there another film like this?
Well, the Harry Potter franchise was coming up, and then Star Wars was there, and that was another proof of concept for this.
Well,
but like Star Wars is a space film. This is more of like a
that was
fantasy
kind
film.
of already an established franchise, and I believe Harry Potter at that point.
Harry Potter was just starting out.
So it was around the same time.
Star Wars and like Star Trek and all those other things were like the only thing that they had like a basis to go off of, and
that had been around since the 70s.
Yeah, and like Star Wars more so because of the early films. It was like the proof of concept to show that like things like this can be done on a greater scale, but Star Wars is like it's an original IP that was created as a movie first, right? It was sort of a comic, but like it didn't really like, it wasn't really known for its comic. It was known for its movie.
Right. At this point, there wasn't anything to this scale that was based on a book series like this, because, like you said, there was Harry Potter, but Harry Potter isn't really to this degree, especially the early movies. We might do Harry Potter at some point. But Harry Potter, at least in my opinion, the first two movies, they get more mature as they go along, but the first two movies are definitely more geared towards kids, where I think these movies, I think, are the right middle ground, where they're not for kids, but kids could definitely watch them, where I think there's like a few scenes that I think might be a bit too much.
It's definitely digestible. It's like PG-13, I would say. There's not a lot of blood in these films.
It's the perfect, PG-13 movie.
but I definitely couldn't see these films being made today. Not only because of the scale that they were made at the time that they were, but also like just the nature of the industry right now. It's so volatile, and it's so like by the numbers algorithmically. This is what needs to be made for us to make money, because in essence films don't really make money, they're like losses, right?
Yeah.
But you know, they're art, and it's art's always like it's always going to be something that's like worth for an investment.
Yeah.
As an impact to culture and as to the narrative of what society thinks and like how it acts in a certain way. Lord of the Rings is a byproduct of its time, which was like the 20s, I think.
Well,
it's like an old story from like the 20s.
Kind of for historical context, The Hobbit, I believe, was written. I might be wrong about this, so fact check me. But The Hobbit, I believe, was written when J.R.R. Tolkien was in the hospital during World War One, and he based Lord of the Rings, I believe, on the rise of the Third Reich in Europe, with Sauron kind of being based on Nazism. So it definitely has a lot of real world implications, and so taking all that into context, I think that it definitely hit its stride when at that particular time when it came out, because, well, as we mentioned, there wasn't as much known about Lord of the Rings, and it was a very niche kind of thing at that point.
Yeah, it was like the early start to like that whole genre of storytelling. At those times, the cinema wasn't around back then. It was like the talkies, but like, you know, it was rare that people went to the movie theaters, and so like having a book, people were more into books back then. But that's what I'm trying to get to with like the whole like it's a product of its time, its era, something like that. Won't be made today, at least not now. I think the industry has a long way to go before we're able to get back there or get to something close to that.
But right now it's, I think, more focused on money and is this superhero movie is definitely going to make us like a lot of money at the box office, but this independent art film is not going to make us money, so we're not going to fund this.
Yeah, I mean, just depends on like how the story's told, what it is, and if it's worth telling for not only the director, the audience, but also people who finance it. So I know a lot of people like to shit on the financiers and stuff, but like they do put in the money for that stuff. I'm not going to say that, you know, their input is invalid or valid or whatever, but like, you know, try dropping $100,000 on a film and being like, I want it to be this way. It's not coming out the way I want it.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, it's really hard to say, but one day we'll get back there. I think it's good to keep an open mind about the industry and how we can adjust and change it, because like it will change. We're kind of worrying about AI right now, but I think AI is just a tool that will
I
like,
think
help us.
We're in a spot where it's at a point in the industry where I think we're at a spot where we're at kind of a crossroads, where people are at a point where they're thinking, oh, do we want to fund this movie that might not make money, but it's, you know, going to impact people on a personal level, where I don't think people are as interested in these kind of bombastic movies that don't have as much you know, material, I should say. So I think it's definitely at a turn, I should say, where that kind of thing is coming back.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're still getting films like that. I think Dune and Dune Part 2 were definitely like a good re-emergence of like the old school style of filmmaking that like Peter Jackson, his predecessors, employed to bring it to the modern day.
And those films kind of do the same sort of thing that Lord of the Rings did, which is blending CG and practical as well, where nowadays it seems to be the focus is just CG everywhere.
Yeah, and we got to take it into account that like it's not only just like the look of the film that really sells the point. It's like who's telling it, and what the story is about, really,
and why are we telling it.
Yeah. And I think like as far as Dune goes, like Dune has a very like today kind of story. It's like it was a story written like the 60s 70s or whatever, and it was but it was made for something that was like greater in the future, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Lord of the Rings was made for its time, but told a story that
but it's always relevant.
That's always relevant. It echoes through the generations that we like come to know and come to see go. So,
and the great stories of all time are things that are written at a certain place in time, but I think are always going to be timeless, always going to be relevant to some capacity. Yeah,
because they deal with like elements of morality and where people come from. I know that like Tolkien was like a I think someone said he was a staunch Catholic or whatever, but I don't know, it was religion and so on being an element of the Lord of the Rings. It's just about like the staying power and like what impacts people the most in its relation to that. So whatever film you make, if you're a filmmaker out there listening to this podcast, or if you're just somebody who is interested and has a passing interest in the craft and the world of filmmaking, I think it's an interesting insight to see where your money goes when you buy that $15 ticket. So, I mean, is it worth it to you? Is it not? Leave a comment down below to let us know if you think films like the Lord of the Rings or Dune would continue to like prosper in the future of Hollywood as we know it, especially with all the changes that are going on, with all the new technologies that are developing that are going to be pushing people in and out of the industry, that are going to have an impact on how we tell stories from here on out. So this is I'm going to decide to end the podcast right now, but thank you guys for listening. This has been the EMT Films podcast. It's been a while since we've done one of these. I know I said at the beginning, but it really does feel like it's been forever, and I really enjoyed having my two really good friends here. Again, Andrew, writer-director. Make sure to look out for his future projects and future films. I know he's got a feature that he's working on. I don't know if he wants to talk about that on this yet, but we will let him, address it.
Yes, so I am working on a feature film called Benny and Jack, which I'm aiming to shoot.
Could you come a little closer to your microphone?
Oh, hello. Yes, so I am working on a feature film called Benny and Jack, which I'm aiming to shoot in late September or early October of 2026. I, at this point in time, am just kind of gathering crew. Even though I'm shooting a bit of a ways away, I'm just kind of gathering cast and crew, so that way it's right. I have people.
Tell them about your
ready to go.
Tell them about your plan of financing, and also like, do you feel comfortable with sharing?
Yeah, I around, I would say February, March time, I was planning to start the fundraising campaign of, I would say, around $10,000 to $11,000 for the film.
Right.
Which would entail about location leasing, catering, paying for the cast and crew. The film is about an hour and 10 minutes. In about, I think, just going off the top of my head, it's about two friends, Benny and Jack, who don't really have much in common. One is a out of work actor. The other is a guy that works at a place that he feels he is being very not really appreciated for his work, but is being paid a lot of money. However, both these guys, despite their differences, always support each other with whatever it is they want to do. So in February or March, I will be launching the fundraising campaign. Probably more like March, because that way there's more time, because I'll be launching it for about 60 days, so that way I can allocate all the fundraising money. But that's about it for now.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good to me. I think we'll keep you guys updated for anyone who's interested in checking that out. I'm pretty sure you said you don't have it up yet, but when he does, we'll update it up here on the podcast. So
yes.
All right, and Jonathan, I know that you are a very interesting man of many talents, of many skills, of which he was just coming back from school. I think you're finishing up college, right?
Yeah. I graduate next week.
Hell yeah,
next week.
You're gonna be a free man. Welcome to the free market.
Oh, guys, it's been a really long journey.
You're joining us at an interesting time, but I think if you keep at it, I think it'll work out. I think just keep a very hopeful mind, I guess.
Yes, can't wait to finish school, to officially be done with school. I say that so many times, but like,
You're not gonna do your master's?
It's me.
Is it really worth it now?
In due time. Yeah. We'll see what the future holds. I'm just riding the ride right now.
It's vibing, man.
Just vibing.
You know, as great artists do, you know, you just gotta vibe. You gotta feel it out. You gotta live life to the fullest until like you can't live it anymore. And
that's a good message.
Exactly. But I know. I think it's gonna be fun. I know that since it's next week, we should definitely like do something or hang out, get together. I know that we're gonna be filming something on Sunday, so that'd be fun. I'm gonna be going up to New York, but hopefully I'll be back in time. I don't know what time we're gonna shoot, but I'm sure it'll be.
Aiming for 11.
Sure. I think I'll be fine. I think it's gonna be fun. Gonna have a lot of fun things this month. Look out for a holiday video that hopefully we'll shoot before the holidays come to an end. That'll be fun. This has been Alex with the EMT.FILMS podcast. We'll try to be more regular on this one. Maybe next week we'll have another one with a little more clear audio. I know we've been having a little bit of a technical difficulty here, but it'll work out. I'm pretty clean with audio, so. Yeah, I don't know. Like, also, yeah, if you want to, aside from the other thing that I suggested in the comments, I think if you guys want another episode on like the Lord of the Rings, we can cover that. But let us know like if there are any other films that you would want us to cover.
Like science.
Sure. That would be a fun one, I think.
Leave recommendations wherever.
Yeah, drop them in the comments section. I'd love to hear them. And remember to subscribe, guys. Subscribe, so that way we can keep growing the channel and we can start making more films happen. Yeah. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Peace.